Welcome to The Shadow Side with Safrianna, the podcast where we illuminate what others too often keep hidden in the dark. I'm your host, Safrianna Luna, and I believe that true growth and healing happen when we're brave enough to explore the shadows. As you listen, may you find greater understanding and awareness around your personal stories and collective trends. Take care of yourself, and let's dive in. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of The Shadow Side with Safrianna. I am delighted to be back in the studio this morning with a dear new acquaintance, hopefully to become just wonderful friend because, oh my gosh, we have so much to talk about. Dr. Matt. Dr. Matt, if you would be so kind as to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Safrianna. Thanks for having me. I'm Dr. Matt Van Auken. I'm a medical doctor and Master of Public Health, clinical director of the Buddha's Medicine. We're an Ayurvedic integrative medicine practice out in Portland, Oregon, with countrywide reach. I also consider myself a justice lover.
Oh, important. We're going to get into that today for sure. So just in case this is your first time tuning in, I'm Safrianna Luna, the Queer Spirit Guide. I'm a licensed trauma therapist, an author, speaker, CEO. I do it all because I'm multi-passionate. And we're going to dive in today into the unhealth industry because as Dr. Matt just indicated, and as you already know about me, we're both in the medical field. We have worked in the medical field. And so we've seen some of the problems and some of the things that could be better, that could be optimized for all humans. We're not quite there yet. So I would love to just kind of dive into the deep end with you, Dr. Matt. How did you first get involved in the medical system from the beginning? What was your call to be a part of this?
That's a big question and a very good one. I'll summarize this way. I was a kid that kind of always threw the drawstrings for the blinds over my shoulder as a real little guy and pretended to be a doctor with a stethoscope. I don't really remember ever wanting to do anything else, but the driver was the untimely passing of my dad when I was 14. That was September 11th, 2001. He worked in the World Trade Center, Tower 1. And there's a lot wrapped up in there we could talk about, but that's not the topic of the conversation today. So that's what kind of drew me into medicine in the first place. Series of life events, and I got very interested during my collegiate career in the sort of lifestyle-driven, wholesome living elements of health, and went into medical school and did the conventional thing, albeit kicking and screaming a good amount of the time, because that's, the environment there is not as wholesome as one might like it to be. And that's a system thing. And then went through residency and came out of residency. I was like, I should probably get my independent chops here in the field and determine what direction I'm taking things in. And so, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, even though I'd had the experience of residency and seen some shadow side things already, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed still went in and was like, I wonder what I can accomplish here. And there were some things that I learned. There were some things that I learned. Yeah, I learned some stuff. And so I spent probably about 5 to 6 years out of residency working in the office-based primary care setting, addiction medicine setting, and also doing some family practice OB, so delivering little ones, or really more accurately, being mindfully present and assisting the process of a new mother birthing her young one multiple times over. So, that's the short, very, very short version. There's a much longer version, but that's not really the point here.
So you, again, just want to acknowledge, right? Many people, their goals or their purpose can come out of that trauma lens, right? And that's part of the shadow that a lot of people don't talk about. So thank you for acknowledging the vulnerability there, that there were these historical pieces in your life that were very traumatizing that, again, helped push you towards that purpose and meaning making in the field. So you've implied you got into the field and you started to see the shadows. You started to see there were some issues. That was mine as well. I was so blessed because I saw the shadows in grad school, working towards becoming a therapist. But then I went into a nonprofit that really like practically had no shadow side other than funding, because it was a nonprofit and they were really there for people's health and getting better and whatnot. But it being in the nonprofit space, I had to eventually go get more work because I wasn't making enough money in the nonprofit space to pay my medical bills. Get that. I had some medical testing done that my insurance was supposed to cover. And next thing I know, I have almost $5,000 in medical debt that I suddenly can't pay, which led me to getting another job with an agency where all the shadows of the insurance industry came boiling up to the surface for me to look at. So I'm very passionate about talking about insurance because it's largely a giant scam. But I'm curious, what were some of the issues or the shadows that you started to see on your side of things?
That's a great question and a hell of an introduction, and thanks for sharing that yourself. There are a lot of shadows. In my view, the ultimate shadow, the omega shadow, is the profit motive, right? And particularly, there any kind of anything that happens in the marketplace, whether it involves the exchange of goods or the exchange of services, is an exchange, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the ways that we as humans exchange energy, I guess, fundamentally is with payment for something. That can be like, here, take these 2 chickens for 3 bushels of apples or whatever.
Right.
Or it can be, like, here's paper that represents currency or whatever, or digital numbers in a register that represent currency in exchange for this work that you X person do as an expert in your field. And that's fine. There isn't necessarily anything unwholesome about that. It's on, it's largely on the people involved in the exchange. And then, of course, also, societal agreement, I guess, unspoken societal agreement or spoken and written, to ensure that happens in an honest, caring, mindful way. When the speculative economy gets involved, and it's about numbers on the register of a slate, a roster of professional investors who already have an unseemly, perhaps ungodly sum of money to each of their individual names, stored in offshore accounts in many instances, or put away in trusts completely untaxed, things start to change a little bit. And those people can begin to call the shots, in particular if some of them are appointed as executives of operations, let's call them, that are responsible for providing coverage for health services of any kind to regular people trying to live their lives and figure out what this human thing is all about. And that, I think every shadow I've seen in my time in the field ultimately funnels back to that omega shadow. I can't say there's one that doesn't somehow resolve back to there is a perverse profiteering kind of a thing that's happening here in the industry. And it's coming by way of the private health insurance racket.
Yeah, I actually decided to just straight up cancel my insurance this year. Don't have health insurance. I was like, I'm done. I've been on the back end of the industry, the front end of the industry, seen the shit. And that is exactly right. Like, it is this, everything rolls back to profit over people. And I'm here to be people over profit. But what's interesting in this shadow is that a lot of it does come back to the insurance companies. Ultimately, I think that if all of us were setting our own wages and everybody was abundant enough to pay or exchange or whatever that looked like, we wouldn't have the stigma that we do around providers who don't take insurance. But most people who are using insurance don't understand what it looks like on the back end for the provider. And I know that after the Luigi United Healthcare situation, a lot of people started to question what was really happening and started looking at things. And there has since been more violence that's occurred in hospital settings and things against doctors and nurses, but they're not the ones that determine whether you can be seen or not if they're taking the insurance. And that's a little thing that I don't think people understand, is if the insurance says to a provider, you can't provide that service, but that provider has an agreement with the insurance company, they have to agree with the insurance company. They can no longer agree with the client, the patient, the person who needs the care. And that's such a huge issue, because it's ultimately that insurance company that's like, yeah, we're not going to profit off of this, so we don't care to insure. And that is just, it blows my mind that more people don't understand this. But then when I see like United Healthcare, who is literally trying to get a lawyer that says you can't even talk about United Healthcare. Here, look at me. Hello. Like, I'm going to talk about it. I was also a client of United Healthcare a long time ago, but like we have
not to United Healthcare.
Yeah, we have to be able to talk about it. So we're just in this weird era where like free speech is being questioned, but that's a whole other thing. But we need to be able to advocate for our medical care, and we often can't do that when this profit-based model is involved. So how have you navigated that shadow?
That's an awesome question. I mean, I guess there's a two-part answer. The first was before I went into private practice and started administering medical care in the way that I always wanted to. I tried as best I could to find workarounds for the really narrow and rigidly parametered ways in which we were told, we as the collective group of, providers, physicians, PAs, nurse practitioners, et cetera, were told that we could practice and administer care to our patients, like the people that we were developing relationships with. They were coming to see us and asking us for our guidance and our opinions. And by and large, I think, and you pointed to this earlier, providers, whether they're on the physician or physical medicine side somehow, or on the behavioral side, or whatever the case is, greater than 99% of the time want to do more than right by the people that they're caring for, right? We don't go into this field not really giving the biggest possible shit, because we do. Like, we care the most about the people that we're taking care of. That is the driving force, especially in the modern day, because it is not possible macroeconomically. It used to be that like a family of 4 or 5, if there was like a single earner and that person was a physician, they'd be set for the rest of their lives. That isn't how that works anymore. Right. Which is not to say I'm not like, a pauper over here. Don't get me wrong, but it's not the same as it used to be. And the way that the structure works macro-wise in the conventional office-based setting, where insurance is taken or insurance payment is received and processed for services rendered and whatever things administered and medications prescribed and what have you, schedules are packed to an impossibly dense degree. Not only is it not realistic, it's quite literally impossible to fully like hear, see, and receive somebody as a patient who's coming in for care over the span of 15 to 20 minutes, even if that's done repeatedly. I tried to find workarounds for that. I did, like sort of an internal integrated medicine referral service a couple half days a week, and doubled appointment lengths to like 40 minutes, and got the buy-in from the administration, and learned a little bit about like how I could like tweak coding a little bit. But ultimately, actually, the result was that impacted the pay that I took home in a negative way. Like, I was willing to do it because that was what I valued, right? I was practicing my values, as putting those into action as best as possible in that setting. Ultimately, it was actually detrimental to me as an earner for my family, right? And that, it turns out, there isn't really a good workaround in that setting, like, at all. It is, and some providers do this. It is like a path one can commit themselves to be fraudulent. Of course, fraudulent in whose eyes? Fraudulent mostly in the eyes of the private insurance mob.
Right.
but fraudulent nevertheless. And I know I'm not going to advocate for fraud of any kind.
Right.
That situation is ultimately why I went into private practice and made the determination, like the most honest and forthcoming exchange I can possibly offer the people that come to see me for care is just to be like, hey, here's what you're getting. Here's the whole package of goods that you're getting at this price point, and this is what you're absolutely guaranteed. And we'll do a payment plan for you, and we'll offer this, and we'll offer that, and here are all the things that come with seeing us for care at the Buddha's Medicine, just using my practice as the example. It's imperfect because it's necessarily going to price some people out of being able to see me, which is not optimal. On the other hand, and you pointed to this in your kind of setup for this question, the alternative is accept insurance payments, by that meaning like operate at the behest and the whim of the private insurance racket and allow them to determine what they're going to reimburse and at what percentage of what care I've administered on whatever logic or non-logic, mostly that one, mostly non-logic.
Yeah.
They're using based entirely on just them wanting to withhold funds as much as possible for themselves so they can return that to their executives in the form of completely unacceptably high paydays, golden parachutes, and of course also for the poor shareholders, we have to think about them. I think you shared with me when we had last year. I'm channeling your partner a little bit there. Right? With the poor shareholders.
The poor shareholders.
We have to think about them. You know, the 83% of all the, something like 83 or 85% of all the, you know, the stocks on the market are held by like 1% of people, right? The poor shareholders.
The poor shareholders.
Yeah. God. Oh my God. What will they ever do? That's the alternative. And then what one has to do, especially in a small private practice setting, is hire staff to navigate the insurance negotiation process, which is additional output. Mm-hmm. And so the result often becomes an unsustainable practice model for somebody like myself, or I believe yourself, who values time and attention given to the person, the people that they're working with, right? I take 3 hours over the course of a regular standard intake appointment with somebody who's a new patient to my practice. How much of that do you think insurance wants to reimburse?
10 minutes.
Yeah, roughly. Like, you know, about a 12th of that.
Yeah.
Right. I think I've seen one time, and I'm flabbergasted it's even been the one time over the course of my time in private practice. I've issued people super bills on request. In one instance, I can recall a person had the entirety of their new patient visit reimbursed by their insurance carrier. Fantastic. I'm thrilled for them.
Yeah.
The insurance carrier was not very bright, and they sent me the check. So of course I had to process that and then cut a check to my patient.
Had that happen before too.
I don't want this. This doesn't belong to me. This is yours. Mm-hmm. Okay, whatever. I'm thrilled that it happens even a small minority of the time. But then I also just got notification the other day, and I'm not sure why this came directly to me. Hopefully it went to my patient. I have to make sure she received it. But I've issued her a handful of super bills since we started working together. She's had great health outcomes. Fantastic. Zero coverage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's so ridiculous.
Well, it doesn't matter that you're a licensed behavioral healthcare provider. It doesn't matter that I'm a medical doctor. Screw our credentials. We don't know anything about our patients. The insurance companies who have never laid eyes on our patients, the only thing they see on paper is like a name and identification number, like the person's in a concentration camp or something like that. They're the ones making calls about making the determination. Yes, this is a required treatment. This treatment is evidence-based or is appropriate or whatever for X person with pancreatic cancer or with lupus or with whatever. Take your pick. Somebody who's completely non-clinical, sitting at a desk, or an AI. We have to acknowledge the AI.
It's often that now.
Could be he, she, or AI, or they, or AI, either sitting behind a desk or just a device, is making the determination, yes, you, the patient, deserve and need this care that's being recommended by your provider or your team of providers. Oftentimes it is the latter. It is a multitude of providers
right,
making this similar, coming to the same determination. Yes, this is what you need. This is what you need to survive and thrive. The insurance carrier mob is going like, that's too much. That's too much of dollars, and we don't want to pay that.
It's very dehumanizing.
Extremely.
You've spoken to a lot of the subtleties that are happening behind the scenes. And like, I just want to reiterate some of those points. We as providers, in order to provide good care to our patients and clients, have to be taking good care of ourselves first. Because if we're not, we're going to be giving cruddy health advice, first of all, right? That was why I had to leave the insurance companies, is I'm telling my clients, like, be free, live your real life, like, value yourself. And I'm getting paid less than 50% of what I need to make a living to sustain myself. So when I was having to take insurance, I mean, I was seeing 40 plus clients a week. And I was giving the full time. And there are things on the therapy side where they're trying to essentially convince people to see more clients at a 45-minute rate than more clients at the 50 to an hour rate, because they want people to see more clients and pay them less.
Right.
And not to mention that they can ask you for sensitive records at any time for your clients to validate that they need to be seen. And again, how dehumanizing when there's already a medical team or provider who's showing up and saying, like, no, they do need this. That's why I'm continuing to offer the service. And it does come back to this. People are less important than the profits. And again, instead of the attention being placed on the insurance companies and the industry as a whole, a lot of times it falls back on the providers. Like, why are you doing it this way? That's why I had to like completely pull back from insurance. I was just like, I'm not doing it. And then it took them over a year to unpanel me, which meant that legally I couldn't see any clients during that time that still had that plan, because I couldn't ask them to pay me privately because the contract was still in place. So they trap you. And then they don't want to let you out because you are making them a profit. Even if you yourself are not making a sustainable living or a profit enough to live, the insurance company is profiting off of all of the people that it's doing this to. Yeah. And I want to leap over to, how does this create a lack of health in our society? Right. All of this financial mess, like, how does that end up actually perpetuating the lack of health that we as a society currently have? Because we are a pretty deeply diseased society.
Yes. Yeah, completely agree. And that's another really fabulous and multi-layered question. The first thing that popped into my mind as I was kind of following your lead into the question here was how it's sort of widely acknowledged that there is a gross paucity of providers across the healthcare industry, right? That's physicians, that's behavioral healthcare providers of all sorts. That's also, mid-level providers on the physician side, so PAs and nurse practitioners. And actually, there's something else there that I'm going to get into that's a little bit complex, but I'm going to flag that and come back to it. Part of the reason for that is because so many people are fleeing, and this happened, it accelerated during the COVID pandemic. People are just like fleeing at like 700 miles an hour, working in the healthcare industry because it's physically and emotionally and spiritually exhausting. To try to cram in, like as a physician, for example, like 20 patients, 22 patients a day.
Yeah. Ugh.
Getting to know effectively nothing about each one of them because there just isn't the time. And they're coming in with a list of issues that they have been compiling for some time because it's taken them 3 to 4 months to get in to see you, on the physician side at least. And there's only time to get to one, maybe two of them, if you're lucky, collectively are lucky. And then let's schedule you a follow-up kind of thing. Patients leave unhappy very understandably, and with their needs largely unmet. And providers leave the encounter with their needs largely unmet. This isn't what we went into the field for. We didn't go into the field so we could spend 15 minutes with a person only to offer them basically nothing except cookie cutter algorithmic garbage that doesn't necessarily apply to them as a person, their needs, their desires, their care preferences, their health. And it just runs us ragged, right? I mean, you pointed to it yourself. You're seeing 40 clients a week for, on the behavioral side is like it's so bad it's laughable.
Yeah, it is. All that trauma.
Yeah, that's a wild number of people to try to see. And as though any human being can hold as in as much as we want to, as though any human being can hold that amount of trauma. Just what you're pointing to, right? And that's trauma and all of the sort of secondary stresses that come to bear from it. Those things play out on the physician side all the time as well. The level of awareness on the physician side isn't perhaps as great as I would like it to be, not necessarily at the fault of the providers. Again, it's system wide, right? Like this is the structure. Where is the space? And people are just going home completely exhausted and unfulfilled, and increasingly the dollars they're bringing home have less value. And so at what point does the trade-off actually become worth it? Right? Is it worth it? Is the question a lot of providers, I think, are asking themselves. And I think that's why we've seen so much flight from the field, not to mention the absurd, also laughable cost of going to healthcare professional school of any kind.
Yep.
And how basically the only way, like unless you're good for person Y, if they happen to be a trust fund baby and they've got the funds to just like throw at medical school or grad school to get their master's or whatever the case is, like good on them. That's a vanishingly small number of people. And debt is a real thing. And if people are paying out whatever, 20, 25, 30, I don't know what it is for everybody, 40% of their paycheck over paycheck, or if they're not, they're just extending it for decades more of their lives. How are people ever going to get out under the thumb of that and establish themselves and thrive? Again, it's not like we're paupers over here, but that isn't the thing, right? The thing is, like, at what point does the trade-off become worth it? Right? It's already existential if we as providers are not able to bring our values to bear in our work.
Yes.
Because of the way things are structured. Now, how much worse is that if, like you articulated, you can't even pay your goddamn medical bills?
Right.
What is that? How is that okay?
Yeah. On
what planet is that acceptable? I feel like I might have even lost the initial thread of the question because I just kept going on this.
You're fine. No, it's important stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a really major piece of it. And then on the patient side, part of what's happening is you have this loss in the field of all of these providers who have the intention and the potential to do so much good by their patients, whatever modality they might be practicing, right? There's the potential for so much good to be done and exchanged. And people aren't experiencing that on the patient side. And because of the flight of providers and the paucity of providers, it takes forever to get in to see a provider. Then when they get in to see a provider, the provider is completely exhausted physically and existentially, and they're not getting their needs met, and they're unhappy, and we're all getting sicker.
Yep.
And it just sort of goes around in a loop like that.
Yep.
We just orbit around the same problem over and over and over like that, maybe picking up speed a little bit as we go. Maybe it's like an asteroid entering in an orbit or something like that, and just like circling about until it gets flung off into space again. It's completely unsustainable. And I think we saw this play. I mean, you cited Luigi Mangione. I won't go off too far in this direction, but murder is never acceptable. Of course, this is this is an allegation. Nothing's been proven in a court of law, right? All those things. Murder is never acceptable. Period. Full stop. Right. That is certainly not what I stand for. I don't know anybody in the field who stands for that. Two things can be true at the same time. Brian, whatever his Caucasian name was, like I already forgot.
I don't remember him,
forgot.
unfortunately.
I already forgot. I really feel for his family. It sounds like he had two young kids.
Yeah.
Also, the man was a rat bastard. And we don't have to pretend like he wasn't. He profiteered to the tune of hundreds of millions. Sounds like an average, like a yearly salary of like $1 billion or something like that, by denying care at a rate of like 33% to the patient patrons of United Healthcare and its subsidiaries. And I want to be clear, like I harbor no ill will whatsoever toward the regular people who are working at United Healthcare and just doing their job, because from what I hear, they're having existential moments all over the place too. But this is absolutely like a creme de la creme, kind of a, tip top. Apologies, I got a little tickle in my throat, so I'm not doing the French so much. Where even that doesn't.
I can never do that, so no worries.
Well, I can do better French, just for our listening audience. I'm just not. It's very important for my ego that I say that, I guess. I suppose. The tip top, the executives, the shareholders, those are the people driving. Those are the forces. Right? That perverse profit incentive that they're operating on, that's what's driving the self-pile driver the industry is doing to itself straight into the ground right now, straight into the floor.
Absolutely.
I don't follow professional wrestling, but I watched an expose on it once, and I forget what the wrestler's name is. Something Punks. It might have been CJ or CM Punk or something. Literally, apparently, crapped himself in the ring one day, because also highly exploitative.
Oh yeah,
highly exploitative industry, right? And I feel like that's the actual healthcare sphere right now is just collectively shitting the bed, because what else can we do? The healthcare itself is extremely sick in this country. Healthcare itself has a case of Crohn's disease and is completely uncared for. And it is just defecating itself all day. And it cannot continue like this without the entire system collapsing on itself at some point. And unfortunately, I think that's kind of where we're heading.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the spinning out metaphor is a very good one. The crapping itself metaphor is a very good one, because that's where we're at. And just to speak to a real lived experience of someone, I know somebody who had a major medical incident while they were in college that left their mobility damaged, that left some of their processing damaged. Literally, the physical body went through changes, and this person had to essentially go on disability and try and make a life for themselves, right? That they could live comfortably, a life of dignity that all of us deserve, because they didn't ask for this medical emergency situation. And they have just been bounced around from provider to provider to provider to provider because of all of that burnout, all of that lack of sustainability. And that's exactly the problem. That was why I was like, I've got a full step away, because I can feel myself burning out to the point where I'm going to be one of those therapists that's just like, wow, that sounds hard. For 45 minutes to an hour.
About to say that. I was literally about to say oh man, that sounds really tough, or oh, that sucks.
Yeah, for 45 minutes, and then the client leaves wow, that was useless.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. And that's not what I wanted to do. I am an active carer, right? I want to be in the trenches with my clients. And systems like this don't let us do that. They actively try to get us not to do that, to perpetuate the lack of health, because that makes more profit right now. I think that if it were more profitable for people to be healthy, we would see a very different system right now. But it is currently more profitable to keep people sick, to invent reasons. I mean, I have not looked at this, but the Ozempic thing that's happening right now just boggles my mind. Like I've literally dipped like a pinky into it and gone, yeah, I don't even want to look at what's going on with that because that's scary. Like we're constantly manufacturing these reasons why people need to change themselves that don't even have to do with their health, that then create additional health problems.
Yeah, yes, it's manufacturing consent, but in the healthcare sphere, right? It's Noam Chomsky, but taken out of the political and the military industrial complex realm and put into the healthcare, big pharmaceutical companies, big agribusiness realm, and of course health insurance. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention them again. That is precisely what it is. And how dare your acquaintance, the patient in this instance, or any of your patients or any of my patients, how dare they experience a car accident or an autoimmune disease, or how dare they get COVID and suffer a post-viral syndrome, or how dare they get bitten by a tick, or how dare they get how dare somebody hit them when they're on their bike, or how dare they have a concussion because somebody dropped some crap on their head in an occupational hazard situation. Like, how dare any of these things happen to these people?
Mm-hmm.
How dare they be emotionally traumatized and just self-medicate the way all human beings try to in the various and sundry ways we're just trying to cope and live? How dare any of them do that and then suffer the consequences of that? They need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, is what I think. Meanwhile, we should totally be subsidizing big pharmaceutical, big pharma, big agribusiness developments with taxpayer dollars, and we should totally be privatizing Medicare and Medicaid, so the cost to consumers goes up, to taxpayers goes up, is what I mean, because we're all the consumers of that, and the quality of care goes down and the denial rates go up. We should be continuing, according to that logic, continuing to effectuate really generous socialism for the rich and rugged, pull yourself up by your bootstraps individualism for all of us regular schmoes out here.
Right.
That's obviously what we should be doing. And if we question any of the taxpayer subsidies, obviously we're just socialists ourselves.
Which is a bad word.
Obviously, and apparently that's a bad word. So the macro, yeah, you want to step back. There's a whole other conversation we could certainly have about the Ozempic situation and the insane cost premium put on the various and sundry iterations of that agent and related agents. And there's all sorts of things we could say about individuals like RFK Jr., the least qualified person to ever hold the post of HHS secretary, who is like professionally wrong about roughly 70% of things he says. One of the things that's scariest to me about him is he's actually like right about some things in the general space of like agribusiness and things along those lines. He doesn't know dick about vaccines, and there's plenty we could say about vaccines that's very much in the gray zone, but also like, dude, like smallpox, though, we haven't had it.
And we're having measles parties right now.
Now we're having measles parties, and that's become increasingly common. And like these sorts of things, right? So he's a dummy on that front. He also doesn't know anything about, like, I heard him say, yeah, fast food wouldn't be so bad if it weren't for the seed oils. Excuse me? So we're just going to totally disregard the grade D meat, the pink slime, the literal plastics that are put into this food, and the food and the deep frying, and we're just gonna disregard like all the advanced glycosylation end products and the nitriles and all the literal plastics. Like, we're just disregarding all that. It's just the seed oils.
It's just the seed oil.
Wow.
And don't get me started on the SSRIs and all of that.
The labor camps for people on SSRIs and on stimulants. Holy cow, dude. So just concentration camps. That's it. You just want to take people who are figuring out how to cope, and they're on medication probably for a very valid reason. And like, I've got lots of thoughts about medications and big pharma.
Me too.
Also, sometimes these things save lives, and we can hold two views in our minds at the same time and somehow resolve those things as thinking capable, mentally capable adults. Labor camps
Yeah.
is a
I
thing
dug
that he
into that.
suggested.
I know I dug into that because I was like, oh, this does not sound good. And as of now, just for the sake of let's mark the date, it is March 10th,
Yes,
2025.
Mario
It
Day.
is it's Mario Day, and it is said that it would be optional, not mandatory as of right now, according to my research. So don't be too afraid yet, but it's something we have to be aware of what people in these big health spaces are saying,
Mm-hmm.
especially if they're not backing it up with science, if they're not backing it up with, I mean, even good philosophy on human beings. I don't know. Like, we need more sense. And I think that I want us, as we're wrapping our time up today, to just really think about this unhealth industry and what does the individual do to begin to reclaim their power. What do they do to begin to reclaim their health, to take charge of it? For me, it is the four cornerstones of wellness are your nutrition and your hydration, your sleep, your
Mm-hmm.
movement, and your mindfulness. I'm
Yep.
not saying everybody has to go out and meditate, but mindfulness can be looking out the window and watching the birds for 5 minutes and just focusing on that. It can be literally taking a walk and just be mindful as you're moving your feet. Like, oh, my feet are going back and forth. Like mindfulness, is writing,
Writing, doodling.
anything that you can just be in the moment with. Like, that is where we start to gain our health back instead of all of the distractions all of the time. But we also feel the deep need to be distracted in a society that seems constantly on fire and like we're constantly dodging yet another danger coming our way. So what would you say to someone who's wanting to reclaim their health and kind of unhook from this unhealth system as much as they can?
I mean, I agree with what you're suggesting completely. I also, and I know you're aware of this as well from our past discussions, but one thing I want to be mindful of and call out is that not everybody has the bandwidth to do that, because sometimes they're working 2 or 3 or God forbid 4 jobs to make ends meet, because that is the cutthroat mobster world we live in right now. And it can be really difficult even to find that time. And it isn't anybody's fault. Do the best you can. Seek out like-minded individuals who you feel at home and safe interfacing with, right? I guess I would add to the behavioral health or the mindfulness piece. I was going to use the word stable, but that's not what I'm going for. It's more like wholesome and fulfilling social interfacing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Community.
One of the reasons I enjoy talking to you is because I get some of that out of my interactions with you, right? It's that there are things that suck that we need to be able to get off our chests, and also we need to be able to share and indulge in hope and potential and friendship and love in all of its different forms. We need to be able to see and offer and experience and receive that to be well and healthy to the extent that it's within our power. Yeah. And we also, like, if you have the bandwidth for it, organize, whether that's by way of protesting, whether that's by way of supporting. It could be a direct ballot initiative that improves health in your locality or in your state, or it could be organizing with a group that can devote some resources to legal action, even if you're not the person really effectuating that necessarily, right? If you have the bandwidth. Not everybody is going to,
right?
Because we do need to find hope and connection in moments like these, and this moment preceded RFK Jr. and it preceded Ozempic, and it preceded all that stuff, right? It's just sort of coming to bear a little bit more now. Yeah, we do need to be able to find some more of that. And I would say if you have the resources and the bandwidth, there are people like us out there who are more than happy, more than willing to devote the time, the attention, the care to people who come seeking their support as providers in various ways in healthcare. And we'll be there. That is what we went into this field for. Yes. And that's what, I think I speak for myself, and I believe I speak for you also from our past discussions. That is what drives the work that we do.
Yeah. Just wanting people to be able to be their healthiest, most dignified, integral self in the world that largely tries to keep us unhappy, unhealthy, buying products,
Buying stuff,
stuff.
cheaply made shit that was not manufactured by anybody here in the United States because our economy is just speculative garbage now. We don't produce anything of value anymore. It's all made abroad and then shipped back here from like the just.
Yeah. And this is where I
Yeah.
say, another health tip, buy local, right? Go
Buy
support a
local.
farm,
Mhm.
support a small business, understand where what you're getting comes from, because a lot of products that we buy do have a health impact that, we could talk for hours about that. So,
It's another
Dr. Matt,
discussion.
thank you so much for sharing your thoughts today. Is there anything else that you would like to share as we are wrapping up today?
Yeah, a quote. One of perhaps my favorite political commentator of the last probably like 10 years, Michael Brooks, passed on in an untimely fashion, unfortunately, during the COVID pandemic. He said, be hard on systems, be kind to people.
Mm. Oh, that just gave me goosebumps. Yes, the
Mhm.
systems are built to protect just a few. And we could help and assist and protect one another as a human collective. So let's focus on that and keep building this hope, as you say, and this just betterness for all humankind. Thank you so much, Dr. Matt. It has been a pleasure. Talking about the shadow side of the industries are not a pleasure, but having the conversations and getting it out on the surface so people can see it absolutely is. So thank you so much.
Likewise. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Safrianna. That's a real pleasure, and I hope to do it again.
Absolutely. All right. So until next time, my friends, I'm Safrianna. As always, we are here, whether it's myself or one of my guests, you can reach out, you can find us, and you can get the support that you need. So please don't hesitate. We love you. We see you. We believe in you, and we are cheering you on. Bye
Hell
for
yeah.
now. That brings us to the end of this conversation today. Thanks for being brave enough to walk in the shadows with me. If you found value in this episode, please consider subscribing to Shadowside with Safrianna wherever you listen to your podcasts, and leave a review to help others find this space of transparency and expansion. You can also connect with me at safrianna.com or livinglunas.com for more information. Until next time, know I'm loving you fiercely and cheering you on.